Welcome back to the Lars Larson Show. It's a pleasure to be with you. It's sad to see that 21 people have died as those protests continue in Iran, but I have to give the young people, most of them young people, real credit for being willing to go to those extremes to try to win the liberty that they've been wishing for a good long time. Frank Gaffney joins me now, the founder and president of the Center for Security Policy. So, Frank, should we be glad that we finally have a president now who's willing to stand up and at least support the protesters who've taken to the streets of Iran, unlike the previous president?
Listen, Lars, we should, of course, be pleased that the president is standing for freedom and for the sorts of interests that we share with the Iranian people, which is to have a regime that oppresses them and threatens us removed from power. This is an extraordinarily exciting moment. Now, whether it will be snuffed, as was the previous Green Revolution, Green Movement, as it was called, remains to be seen. But at least the President of the United States is on the right side this time. And more to the point, I think this is part of an overall sort of rejection by him of the policies that Barack Obama pursued that not only encouraged the regime in Tehran to believe they could, with impunity, continue to enslave their people, but they also are on notice that he thinks this deal that the president, his predecessor, signed, I call it the Obama bomb deal, is unacceptable, defective, and soon to be dispensed with. And I think that's, again, to the credit of this president, and hopefully it will help bring down this regime in Tehran.
Well, let me ask you, I want people to remember back in 2009 that there were protests then. As you said, there was that nascent green revolution. And I remember thinking out loud on the air saying, please let the president support this kind of stuff because this is what's going to bring about change in that country and change the way I think nobody could object to. If the people of a country demand that their government change, that's the kind of change that Americans can get behind. I mean, we had the same kind of demand in the fall of 2016 when Americans said we're not happy with the previous administration, we want something different, we voted it in. Well, the Iranians don't have that freedom yet, but they might get it if they're willing to push hard enough, and I would like to see our country support them. But even Obama, in 2009, when he was president, said he didn't want to be seen to be meddling in Iran. He apparently didn't have a problem years later shipping them plane loads full of money, giving them all kinds of relief from sanctions and relief from other limitations, but he didn't want to meddle in Iran. And Hillary herself said we were too restrained in our support of the protests in June of 2009 and in our condemnation of the government crackdown that followed. That won't happen again. Well, it turns out Hillary's actually right about that. It won't happen again because we have a president who's willing to support those people in the streets. Although, to hear the Democrats tell it, they think Donald Trump is terrible that he's supporting the protesters in the street, even though that's exactly what Hillary Clinton suggested she would do if she were president.
Yeah, look, I think it's the Trump derangement syndrome of people who just can't bring themselves to applaud anything he does. I really can't believe that Democrats or Republicans in Congress or among the American people aren't welcoming the possibility that the people of Iran are, as you say, seeking to end a threat to them and to us. This should be nothing but good news, I think. But back to the point about the previous president and what he did, Lars, it wasn't just you who was asking on air about Barack Obama supporting the Green Movement, the people seeking in that earlier time to get some measure of liberation from this repressive Sharia supremacist organization called the mullahocracy of Iran. It was also the people in the streets of Tehran themselves and the other cities of Iran that were specifically calling for Obama to help them, to support them, to at least acknowledge what they were doing in a positive way. He would have none of it. And I think, history is, if it's written by freedom-loving people, and pray God it will be, the historians will be absolutely flummoxed at what Barack Obama was thinking and what he did at this moment of time in this particular extraordinarily important country with arguably one of, if not the most dangerous regime on the planet, which is to say he helped legitimate them. He helped prop them up with financial assistance and diplomatic, agreements. And not least, he cleared the path for them later, somewhat later, if not quite soon, to get nuclear weapons.
Yeah. And now, speaking about nuclear weapons, let's talk about North Korea for a moment. I'm talking to Frank Gaffney from the Center for Security Policy. I'm now hearing that one of the preconditions for serious talks with North Korea is going to be you got to do it without the nukes. We need you to take the nukes off the table for us to have serious talks. Do you think we can get that out of the North Koreans?
I don't think so. I think they've got every reason to believe that they can simply hold the line and not only have the weapons they've got now, but continue to get them. There's a very interesting piece that I would commend to your listeners, Lars, by my friend Bill Gertz in the Washington Free Beacon today. It quotes from a document. We can't be sure of its authenticity, but it sure sounds right. Evidently, a secret memorandum from within the highest circles of the Chinese government explaining the double game that they're going to play to the outside world, signaling that they support efforts to sanction and curb the nuclear weapons program and behavior of the North Koreans, while signaling to the North Koreans, we got your back. Don't worry about it. We're not going to let anybody do anything really bad to you. Just don't do any more of those nuclear tests. That's kind of a mess for us. But basically, we're going to continue to arm you as well as provide you fuel and other, necessary financial assistance. So this is the problem that I believe Donald Trump now faces is it's widely believed that the Chinese are the only game in town for dealing with this threat in a peaceable fashion, and they're not interested in playing on our side. And to the extent we get that, Donald Trump tweeted about this the other day when, he caught them red-handed.
With the oil shipment.
Subterfuges with the oil shipment, right? He said this isn't going to end in a friendly way if the Chinese behave in this manner, and I think they're going to continue to do that. The real problem for us at the moment, Lars, is the North Koreans have finally opened the door to what the government of South Korea desperately wants to do. They've got a very, very, very left president now who's been frantic to try to get into negotiations with the North. That door is now open. We'll see what comes of that conversation. I'm afraid it'll be more of propping up this regime, much as we're doing with the Iranians.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. I think you're right. Frank Gaffney, thank you very much, and Happy New Year to you. Glad to have you on again, and we'll look forward to having more talks as the year goes by. That's Frank Gaffney, the founder and president of the Center for Security Policy.